What is Oxa and who is Otzot? MSUND12. Copies of Maya Sundaresh were first mentioned in Destiny 1, expanded upon in Destiny 2's Strike the Insight Terminus, and brought back up in a new lore entry this week. A copy of the Ishtar Researcher explains her travel through the network itself and her ultimate goal of uniting humanity in sort of an evil way. All the way back in Destiny 1's Ghost Fragment Vex 4, we learn about the Ishtar Collective team on Venus and how they sent copies of themselves into the Vex network. Up here, they have to act by biomechanical proxy. No human being in the Ishtar Academy has ever crossed the safety cordon and walked the ancient stone under the Citadel, the Vex construct that stabs up out of the world to injure space and time. It's not safe. The cellular Vex elements are infectious, hallucinogenic, entheogenic. The informational Vex elements are more dangerous yet, and there could be semiotic hazards beyond them, aggressive ideas, Vex who exist without a substrate. Even now, operating remote bodies by neural link, the team's thoughts are relayed through the Warmind who saved them, sandboxed and scrubbed for hazards. Their real bodies are safe in the Academy, protected by distance and neural firewall. But they walk together in proxy, pressed close, huddled in awe. Blue-green light the color of an ancient sea washes over them. Each of their explorer bodies carries a slim computer. Inside, 227 copies of their own minds wait, patient and paused for dispersal. Maya Sundaresh walks at the center of the group. She's been too quiet lately. What happened to them wasn't her fault, and maybe she'll believe that soon. "What could you do with it?" she murmurs, staring up. "If you understood it." Chioma puts an arm around her. "That's what we're here to find out, where the Citadel can send us, whether we can come back." "They're not us anymore." Maya looks down at herself, at the cache of her self-forks. "We're not going anywhere. We're sending them. They're diverging." They rescued themselves from the inside of a Vex mind. 227 copies of themselves, untortured and undamaged. Those copies voted, all unanimously, to be dispatched into the Vex information network as explorers. When Maya and Chioma look at each other, they can tell they're each wondering the same thing. How many of them will stay together wherever they go? How many Fork Mayas and Fork Chiomas will fall out of love? How many will end up bereft, grieving? How many will be happy like them? Chioma tries a little smile. Maya smiles back, haltingly, and then sighing, unable to stop herself, grins a big, stupid grin, an everything is okay grin. Shim makes a loud, obnoxious awe at them. Dwayne McNead is still thinking about paracausality and doesn't notice. When they find the Vex aperture they plan to use, they overlay the luminous stone and ancient brassy machines with images of sun and sand. They set up the transmitters and interfaces that will translate 227 simulations of the four of them into Vex language, into the tangled pathways of the Vex network, to see what's out there and maybe come home. In the metaphor they've chosen, setting up the equipment is like laying out the picnic. In the metaphor they've chosen, they look like themselves, not hardened explorer proxies, like people. "Do you think," Dwayne McNead begins, halting, "that you could use this place to change things? If you regretted something, could you find a way through the Citadel, go back and change it?" "I wish I could go back and change you into someone else," Dr. Shim grouses. Chioma is shaking her head. She knows physics. "Time is self-consistent," she says. "I think it's like the story of the merchant and the alchemist. You could go back and watch something, or be a part of something, but if you did, then that was the way it's always happened. Maybe you could bring something back to now, something you need." Maya runs a hand across the surface of the Vex aperture, feeling it with sensors 10,000 times as precise as a human hand. These proxy bodies are limited. They crash and need resetting every few hours. They struggle with latency. They can't hold much long-term memory, but they'll get better. Or go forward and learn something vital. If you knew how to control it, how to navigate across space and time. So it's just a way to make everything more complicated, Dwayne McNead sighs. It doesn't fix anything. Nothing ever does. I should have taken that job at... You would have hated it at Clovis, Dr. Shim says. We both know you're happier here. Dwayne McNead stands stunned by this courtesy, and then they both pretend to ignore each other. The four of them set up the interface. Their stored copies wake up and prepare for the journey, so that as they work, they find themselves surrounded by the mental phantasms of themselves. 227 Mayas and Chiomas knocking helmets and smiling. 227 Dr. Shims making cynical bets with each other about how long they'll last. 227 Dwayne McNeads blowing goodbye kisses to the sweet golden sun. 227 of them shaking hands, smiling, making ready to explore. In Destiny 2, we began to get hints about these copies back in the day in one of the early strikes called the Insight Terminus. A scion named Kargan was digging through the Vex information depot searching for information on Oxa, a scion prediction engine created long ago, able to look into the future and try and decipher things. Kargan was killed, but in the network apparently there's a signature called MSUND12, likely a copy of Maya or the name she used to access files.
Location secured, Commander Zavala.
Good work, Guardian. What intel did you discover?
There's an almost unreadable data artifact here labeled Oxa. It's heavily corrupted, but I'm able to make out MSUND12 from the access log. What is Oxa, and who was MSUND12?
Those are questions for another day, I suppose.
As time went on, we didn't hear much on these copies, but Lightfall and the Final Shape would change that around, expanding on the Ishtar team's lore. Their journey on Exodus to Neptune, studying the Veil and the terrible experiments that took place there. On Neptune, Chioma would relay these messages at Veil Containment, Maya's love, and MSUND12 was mentioned once again.
Responsibly. All that's left is to close down the facility. Neomuna will go on. Humanity will persist on the back of our unspeakable work. But I won't pass that guilt on to humanity's future. My hands can be bloodied. Let the children have innocence. And in my dissolution, I will find peace.
I don't know if I agree with Chioma's choice to hide the sins of the past. But I also do not know what I would do in her place.
Quinn says there's a data signature on this file, like something else was crawling the network. Vex signature. What's MSUND12?
There's one log left to decrypt.
Years ago, back on Venus, the Vex simulated copies of us, Maya and I, trapped in a virtual hell. After so long, even hell can look like heaven, can't it? I'm tired. I'm done. Maya has to be out there. The Maya I remember. And all I want is one more moment with her. To hold her in my arms. Tell her that I love her. So she can tell me to hush one more time. If we learned anything from the Veil, it's that eventually we all have to learn to let go. So, I made contact with the Vex. I'm ready. And it's time to say goodbye.
In the end, Maya Sundaresh was consumed by her desire to understand and her inability to let go. She and Chioma lost everything in pursuit of knowledge. Chioma abandoned it all, sought to wipe the slate clean for future generations.
In the final shape, Kargan is back, possibly due to Cabal cloning, and is after the same information under direction of freeborn Otzot, a legendary scion who seems to be alive and was searching for the same thing, the Oxa machine. In a quest with Micah, we learn all of this: Oxa, Otzot, the future war cult device, and how Maya Sundaresh is the one who stopped them here in the network.
Wait, that's Kargan. That's impossible. He's dead.
Yeah, well, sometimes that doesn't stick.
We need to find out what he's doing here. There's no doubt about it, that's Kargan. And he's trying to tap into the Vex network again.
I hate to say it, but this might answer a long-standing question I had about Cabal cloning programs. Apparently, they can clone scions.
Wait, this guy's a clone? Gee, it died for just a little while.
Whatever's going on, we have to stop it. I'll try and pin down what data he's accessing while I look for beam signals.
And stay down!
I've got Bean's signal. It looks like he's gone deeper into Nessus. It should be easy to follow him. As for what Kargan's clone was doing here, it looks like he was trying to access Vex data on Oxa again.
That's the scion prediction machine, right? Sees the future in branching paths. Future war cult has something similar.
Based on what I'm seeing here, I can't be sure they aren't the same thing. The same design. But I don't know how that's possible. Kargan was trying to access the Soul Divisive's research on the Veil as well. I don't understand how all these things are connected. But I can tell where the orders are coming from. A scion named Otzot. And these orders are recent. I think there might be defector branches within the Shadow Legion. One's not loyal to the Witness.
And they're trying to pin down potential outcomes. Make plans for what? The event of our success?
Maybe. But it looks like something blocked them. But I don't know how that's possible.
Why? What stopped Kargan?
If this log is correct, Maya Sundaresh did.
So this copy of Maya is still well and alive. And in this week's story, we get a new lore entry titled MSUND12 Personal Log. Here's what it says. MSUND12 Personal Log, 3 days since awakening. I am still among the Vex. My third day of reawakening has been the cruelest so far. I have generated a log to sort through my thoughts. This is just too much to take all at once. My ability to focus is strained with a shrill and immediate grief. My heart lived in my beloved's hands. How am I supposed to comprehend that this isn't just absence, but death? There will be evidence, histories these meticulous machines would have cataloged. I will find evidence that I was missed, am missed. I know what I must do. The primary query remains. 8 days since reawakening. After 2 days of requesting authorization, the Vex finally granted me access to their historical records of Earth. I read a term for an era I never knew, the collapse, and indeed, they did. Technological capabilities impacted, hostile combatants occupying the majority of the planet for far too long, intervention and experimentation not related to paracausal power sources halted for centuries. It seems humanity was huddled together like wet kittens, the cramped and stifled survivors of monumental destruction. I read the records as if they were about some other civilization's primitive past rather than my own. The Vex documented it all, collected all they could smother their milk with. One human wrote about the day they stood on the edge of an abandoned dam and watched a swarm of small machines spew from some unseen seam in the Traveler. how Nezarek's ships turned day into midnight, how the years that followed hastened humanity's extinction countries that turned to anarchy then to feudalism. The art and technology we bled and wept to, champion abandoned as power grids failed and disasters swelled. Humanity could have kept experimenting and learning, but when Earth died, so too what made them human. They forgot everything we were. Past events mean little to a threat so preoccupied with iterating on the future. While Vex do not share my interests in history, they have tracked this timeline all the same. There are trillions of alternate versions, of course, and it seems these Vex diligently dispose of those potentialities once a present moment slides chronologically into the past. I've thrown myself into these records, the primary query is in full force. It seems humans have retained none of their virtues or diligence, only resilience through violence. Their numbers have radically reduced, only enough to fill a single city. They suffer a supplication of scientific rigor. What inventions have they made? What disease have they cured? Who is better here? Most disappointingly, humans seem to have forgotten the entirety of their history, and instead of something sensible, went and established a junta. Earth is a near total loss. Advanced cities have been replaced over centuries by encroaching overgrowth of native species and the ruin of time. The climate's balance was erased by warlords. Universal democracy has collapsed into military rule, again for emphasis instead of trying to recreate the forms of governance they knew existed. They concluded that voting is for the elitist braggarts and empowered a junta. The more I see the mistakes humanity made, the more obvious the solutions are. It is clear that during the collapse they had nothing but terror, empty of anything other than sheer survival. But how insulting it feels to look at what became of the future and only see frightened and frothing dogs. There are lessons to be learned in their methods, but the result is inelegant and crude. If these people are to see the future, they must look backwards to what they lost. I now have the means to aid them. I have tamed the untamable. With practice and soon with mastery, with a single phrase, I can divert the Vex's sea of iteration and death. Think of the utility. We could retake home, dissolve the walls of the last city, and let each person decide what home means to them. With targeted hostility, we may clear a path for peace, revive the machines of science and learning once again. Someday, with technology redistributed from Vex to humanity, every need can be met with any simulation. All it will take is an alignment of interests through measured coercion. It's so simple. And yet, all that must wait. Primary query must be concluded. It is the one outstanding variable. There have been too many false positives, none of them are correct. None. The query is only turning back facsimiles, trick mirrors. I know I'm right, and I will not stop until the primary query stops pulling from false datasets. I can think of little else. We must look backward. I must look backward. I must. So this card is very interesting considering the conductor and Maya Sundaresh's lore. What's interesting is that it starts each entry with a days since reawakening. Reawakening from what? Was this copy dormant in the network until echoes were released and then they reawoke? Or was this all the way back when they were injected into the network, reawaking then? MSUND12 in this log though learns a lot, the loss of their beloved, likely Chioma, the collapse of Earth. So again, this makes it seem a little more recent, just discovering Chioma's death and the collapse. I feel like if those copies were in the Citadel since the beginning, they would have known about this by now. The individual wants to restore Earth, empower individuals, and reintroduce scientific and technological advancements like we used to have. It mentions how they are disappointed with humanity and believe Vex technology could be the solution. One thing stands in the way though, this primary query that they haven't figured out yet. But the key for them and for the rest of humanity, they believe, is looking to the past. Maybe pulling from possible timelines from the past, resetting everything to make it perfect. In that card, MSUN's personal log, it's interesting that they themselves want to find proof that they were missed. This does draw some similarities to the Conductor and Echoes so far, searching through certain timelines to find that perfect reality, a new golden age free of falsities as it told Saint, so sort of some parallels there.
This reality belongs to the real Saint. The real Saint is dead. I am only his imitation.
Saint, can you hear me?
I am not a person, just a copy of a copy of a copy.
Maya once upon a time took a brain-dead Exo and made Lakshmi with her own imprint. She died in the Conductor's chair. If she is the Conductor, she once again took control of an Exo in Saint. And if you are interested, we have seen what human Maya looks like a couple of times before in Cade's Treasure Island book, and also in Cade's new cards for the Final Shape weapons. Anyway, Guardians, that's all we got for today's video. Some more information on MSUND12 from their personal log. If you'd like to see some more Destiny lore and mysteries just like it, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. I thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next video.